Night presses down on a city that still believes in tomorrow. A red and cream PCC streetcar noses into a platform on the P line for the last time. Cameras blink. Kids lean over the yellow line for one more bell clang. Motorman Dewey Berry, cap low, left hand on the controller, eases the car to a stop like he's done 1,000 times. Behind him, people clutch transfers they'll never use. Souvenirs now. A city official steps to a microphone. The speech is short. Progress, flexibility, no more rails to repair. Sleeker buses, faster highways. He says it like a blessing. A cutter's torch sparks in a distant yard. Someone shouts, "Hold it right there! One more picture!" The bell answers. Ding, ding. Doors sigh open. A last rush. Laughing. Crying. And then, as the car pulls away and the pole's shoe hums on the wire, you can hear what isn't said. We're rolling up a century and hanging it on a nail. Freeze this frame. If all you know is this night, it looks like an ending that makes sense. To understand why this ending wasn't the end, start at a hill before sunrise with a cable under the street. 4 in the morning on Clay Street. August 2nd, 1873. Fog beads on cobbles like sweat on glass. A new machine waits at the lip of a hill that has humiliated horses and men. A grip car with a cable running under the street, a trailer behind it, a steel vise inside, ready to clasp a moving rope you cannot see. The first hired grip man takes one look and says no, too steep, too wet, too final if something fails. So Andrew Smith Hallidie, Scottish-born wire rope maker, climbs into the box himself. William Eppelsheimer, the engineer who drew the line, watches from the curb, hands on his elbows like he's holding his own ribs in place. Hallidie takes the lever, the mechanism engages, the car shudders, the rope below the street hauls them out across the crown and over the lip, and this is the miracle. The brakes hold, the cable pulls, and the car starts down, steady as a heartbeat, iron on iron, solving a problem everyone could see and nobody could beat. At the bottom, Hallidie steps off with his hat in his hand. The first run works. A month later, September 1st, regular service begins. Those hills that ate horses now stitch neighborhoods together. The city changes shape because a man got up early and decided fear could wait. Cables beat gravity. Electricity would beat everything else. The first truly scalable electric street railway didn't begin in Boston or New York. It began on worn streets in Richmond, Virginia. Frank J. Sprague, ex-Navy engineer, stubborn, bets on motors, controllers and brakes that work together like a nervous system rather than a muscle. Doubters say electricity won't handle steep grades, tight curves, heavy loads and dirty tracks. They've seen half-baked experiments spark and sputter. Sprague's answer is a system. Motors hung low inside the trucks, controllers that feed power smoothly, brakes that actually stop. On a cold February morning in 1888, the Richmond Union Passenger Railway starts running. Within months, the network stretches miles through the city with fleets of cars. About a dozen miles, dozens of cars. It climbs hills that would have thrown a horse. It curves around corners that would have terrified a cable grip. It just works. City officials from up and down the coast come to ride. They take notes. They go home and string wire. Street rail maps flower like frost on glass. Within a decade, the electric streetcar becomes infrastructure, invisible, the way breathing is invisible. Fares hold at a nickel. Enough for a loaf of bread, enough to get you across town. Streetcar suburbs fan outward on lines whose names become neighborhoods. Dorchester, the Richmond district, Bronzeville. By the 20s, the average urban American takes transit hundreds of times a year. This isn't quaint. It's how a city lives. You don't ride the streetcar to make a statement, you ride it to get eggs, to punch a clock, to see your sister on the other side of town. We built modern cities on rails because they worked. The rails didn't ask for applause, they asked for a nickel and got you there. Here's the turn. Rail didn't fail, incentives changed. In San Francisco, engineers and accountants sharpen pencils and circle the cable cars with numbers that promise savings. Mayor Roger Lapham, businessman, pragmatist, not a man for sentiment, says the quiet part out loud. Get rid of them. They're old, they're slow. They're charming in the way a grandfather clock is charming, which is to say, expensive and in the way. The sentimentalists, he writes, do not have to pay the bills. Wrong target. Identity beats arithmetic when a city hears its own sound. The cable car system had been shrinking for years. Lines on Fillmore, on Castro, gone, replaced by buses and trackless trolleys. By the late 40s, only a handful of routes survive, and Lapham wants those gone too. He frames it as common sense. An expensive overhaul looms. Small accidents cost the city thousands. Why throw good money after bad? The future, he says, is diesel. But one woman says no. Friedel Klussmann, socialite, president of the San Francisco Federation of Arts, organizer with a spine of bridge cable, writes to the mayor before most people even know there's a fight. Her letter is polite, but it doesn't beg. Can you imagine London without Big Ben, Paris without the Eiffel Tower, New York without the Statue of Liberty? Can you imagine San Francisco without its cable cars? Lapham's reply isn't diplomatic. He writes back, dismissing her and her allies as sentimentalists who do not have to pay the bills. As if sentiment is a character flaw, as if paying attention to what makes a city feel like itself is indulgent. Wrong move. Klussmann doesn't write another letter. She mobilizes. She calls a meeting of women's civic groups, nearly 30 of them, garden clubs and arts leagues and wildflower societies, and threads them into a single rope. They name themselves the Citizens Committee to Save the Cable Cars, and they go to work like it's a campaign for high office. They gather signatures on street corners. They print pamphlets with pictures of gripmen and hills. They court celebrities passing through town. Eleanor Roosevelt, the former First Lady, speaks up for the cars. Actress Irene Dunn poses with a model cable car and smiles for the cameras. The Emporium department store sells dresses printed with cable car designs. Life magazine runs photo spreads of the Powell Street line, gripmen leaning into the lever, passengers hanging off the running boards with the wind in their hair. Klussmann and her committee force the issue onto the ballot. A charter amendment compelling the city to keep operating the Powell Street lines. The campaign makes it clear. This isn't about transportation, it's about identity. It's a vote for the city you want to live in, not the ledger you want to balance. Election night, November 4, 1947. The returns come in and stack up like bricks. More than 3 votes to save the cable cars for every 1 vote against, about 77%. The protection gets written into the city charter in ink that won't fade. Scoreboard, identity 77, efficiency 23. Klussmann doesn't stop. A few years later, the privately owned California Street line goes bankrupt. The city buys it, but officials still talk about replacement, about buses, about cost. Klussmann organizes again. This time it's harder. The charter amendment doesn't cover the California line, but she wins a compromise. The California line survives. So does a hybrid Powell-Hyde line. She keeps fighting for decades. When she dies in her 90s in the mid-80s, the cable cars are draped in black. A decade later, the city names the turntable at the northern end of the Powell-Hyde line after her. San Francisco kept its cable cars. The rest of the country kept tearing out the rails. In the late 40s, a federal jury convicts companies tied to National City Lines, a consortium backed by General Motors, Firestone and Standard Oil, of conspiring to monopolize the sale of buses and supplies to transit firms they controlled. It's a scandal. It makes headlines. The fines are small, the companies pay and move on. The deterrence doesn't stick. But the bigger force isn't a backroom deal. It's policy, written in daylight and signed with ceremony. In 1956, President Dwight Eisenhower signs the Federal Aid Highway Act. 41,000 miles of interstate highways, a 90% federal match. Cities don't have to ask twice. When Washington writes checks that large for one kind of infrastructure and pocket change for another, the future tilts like a table with a short leg. And that tilt shows up on the platform. It changes who lives where and who gets served. Mortgages, zoning and covenants pull white families outward, while disinvestment hollows many central cities. The highway becomes a border. The trip gets longer. The bus fights the same traffic as the car. Fixed rail lines, already weakened, come up like staples from an old map. That federal math becomes personal on a platform in Los Angeles the night the wire goes cold, March 31, 1963. The last car on the P line slides into the platform. The bell sighs. Faces press to windows. A boy on the curb whispers the car number like a prayer. Like, if he remembers it hard enough, it won't disappear. When the doors close, and the trolley pole leaves the wire with a small blue snap of electricity, that's it. Nearly a century ends in the time it takes to turn your wrist. By dawn, wire crews are already pulling down the catenary. A line that carried people for generations. People going to work, going to school, going home, just stops. The city doesn't scream. It doesn't riot. It just gets a little quieter in one place and a lot louder everywhere else. Traffic fills the space the streetcar left like water filling a hole. No proclamation marks what follows. You feel it as time. Trips that used to take 15 minutes now take twice as long because the bus has to fight the same traffic as the cars. Streets fill toward a lunch hour boil and stay that way through dinner. Downtown feels farther, even if the miles haven't changed. Because now you have to find parking, you have to sit in traffic, you have to plan around the commute instead of through it. The word smog, a term invented in Los Angeles, moves from headline novelty to weather report. Brown air settles into the basin and stays. Short version, we tore out rails and bought distance. But the story doesn't end there, because decades later, something shifts. The comeback doesn't start with romance or nostalgia. It starts with a timetable and a tight budget. Dawn in San Diego, July 26, 1981. Warmer than San Francisco, flatter than Los Angeles, a city that never had much rail to begin with. In a maintenance yard near the border, a light rail car sits on brand new tracks. The car is simple, light, built for function. The budget was tight, the design was pragmatic. The line uses an old freight right-of-way where it can, runs in the street where it must. No grand stations, no marble halls, just platforms, shelters and a schedule. Just after 5:02 a.m., the first train slides out toward the border. The doors close with a click, the motor hums. It's not beautiful in the way the old streetcars were beautiful, it's beautiful in the way a solution is beautiful. The bet is simple. If you move a lot of people a short distance many times a day without drama, without traffic, without 1,000 small delays, a city will start to bend around that line. Jobs appear near stations, apartments follow. People ride it not because they have to, but because it works. Ridership beats projections. The cost per mile is a fraction of heavy rail. Politicians from other cities visit, take notes, ride the trains, watch construction workers and students and seniors and families with strollers and think, we could do this. Cheap works. But design wins hearts. America figures out how to build rail cheaply. To understand how to build it right, look across the ocean. The heart of Strasbourg, France, had been choked by cars for so long that people forgot the stones under their feet had a shape, a history, a reason for being there. By the early 90s, the city decides to turn down the volume. Officials don't ask politely. They reclaim the centre. They restrict car traffic. They widen sidewalks into places where you can stop, sit, breathe, watch the light change on old buildings without a fender in your peripheral vision. And then the tram arrives. It is low floor, sleek, and it behaves like a moving sidewalk. Doors open level with the platform. No steps, no gap, no struggle for anyone with a cane or a stroller or a wheeled suitcase. The vehicle whispers along on smooth rails. People who never rode the bus start riding this because the bus felt like giving up and the tram feels like moving through the city the way the city was meant to be moved through. Because here's the thing, the machine isn't the point. The street is the point. The tram is how you reclaim public space, how you give it back to the people who walk and sit and shop and breathe there. When cars don't dominate, everything else gets room to exist. Cafe tables appear. Trees grow without getting clipped by mirrors. Shop windows face the sidewalk instead of the parking lot. The daily ridership numbers grow, not because the system scolds drivers, but because it gives everyone else something better than waiting behind a bumper at a red light long enough to read a paragraph. If Strasbourg fixes the middle, Karlsruhe fixes the distance. September 1992, Germany. Imagine boarding a tram at a downtown plaza and 5 stops later you're hammering along the National Railway without ever changing seats. That's Karlsruhe. Engineers there decide to stop building separate universes for local transit and regional rail. They negotiate shared track agreements with the National Railroad. They match power systems, overhead wire that works for both trams and trains. They line up platform heights so passengers step on and off at the same level everywhere. The effect is simple. You board near your front step and get off near your destination miles away. You don't plan the connection. You don't worry about the transfer. You just ride. Transfers vanish. Friction drops. Time, the currency of every commute, stops leaking out of your day. Ridership jumps because the obstacles disappear, and people respond by riding the system day after day, until the totals run into the millions each year. Now drop those lessons on one American street. Same pavement, same stops, different result. Market Street, San Francisco, carried electric buses for years, lines that did their jobs without complaint. Buses came, buses went, people rode them. It was fine. Fine is what you say when you don't have a better word, when the thing works but doesn't sing. In the mid-90s, the city tries something different. Restored PCC streetcars, the same model that ran in cities across America decades earlier, take over part of the corridor in 1995. The streetcars run on the existing route, stop at the existing platforms. The only difference is steel wheels on steel rails instead of rubber tyres on asphalt. The first day is a parade. News cameras, city officials, people taking pictures. The second day is a Tuesday. People going to work. The third day is a Thursday. People going to the doctor, to the bank, to meet a friend for lunch. And the numbers start telling a story. Ridership climbs, on the order of 40% over the bus that came before, on identical pavement. Not double, not triple, but enough that the accountants notice and the planners start asking questions. When the line extends to Fisherman's Wharf in 2000, the cars are full. Not just tourists with cameras, though there are plenty of those. Also, people going to work at the hotels, students heading to class, seniors going to the clinic, parents with kids going to the park. Same street, rail wins. By a lot. One corridor doesn't save a city, but it proves a point that cities had forgotten. With the right vehicle, the right infrastructure, the right commitment, you can carry more people, more reliably, more comfortably, and make the place feel like a place instead of a route. Buses are still essential. Buses go where rails can't. Buses adjust to demand in ways trains don't. But the claim that rails in streets are an outdated extravagance, a vestige of a slower time, that claim dies on Market Street, dies again in Portland, dies again in every city that builds a streetcar line and watches the neighbourhood around it change. And up the hill from Market Street, those cable cars that Mayor Lapham tried to throw away decades ago, they're still running. In 1964, the federal government declares them a National Historic Landmark. The whole country now recognises what Friedel Klussmann knew in a letter written before dawn. Some things are worth keeping, not because they're efficient, but because they're ours. Because they say who we are in a language that doesn't need translation. The system almost dies again decades later. Metal fatigue, deferred maintenance, cables fraying in ways that make engineers nervous. The city shuts the whole system down in the early 80s and rebuilds it from the rails up. New cables, new track, new mechanisms, new everything under the old, beautiful skin. It costs a fortune for 3 little lines. The city pays it. When the cars return to service, the bells still sound the same. The mechanism still clasps the cable the same way Hallidie's did more than a century earlier on Clay Street. The past doesn't have to die to make room for the future. Sometimes the past is what makes the future worth living in. Stand again where we began. A curb at night, a platform edge, a city making a choice. Back then, in the early 60s, the microphone said progress meant pulling out rails, no more tracks to maintain, no more wire sagging in the summer heat, just smooth asphalt, sleek buses, private cars, highways that connect everywhere to everywhere else, as long as you have a car and a place to park it, and patience for the traffic, and lungs that can handle the air. Now, here, today, progress sounds different. You hear the soft grind of steel on steel in a reserved lane, a sound that's quieter than engines but cuts through the noise in a way that makes you look up. You notice the crosswalk is wider than it used to be. The sidewalk has trees. The storefronts are open later because foot traffic picks up when people aren't sealed in cars, when they're walking from the station to the restaurant to the bookstore to home. A train comes. The floor is level with your shoes. You can board with a wheelchair, a stroller, a bike, bags in both hands. You step over a seam that barely exists. You sit, or you stand and hold the rail, and you look out the window at a street built for people again. Not because someone wrote a manifesto, or staged a protest, or argued at a hearing for 6 hours, but because the machine you're riding in made room for them. The men at the microphone decades ago were confident. They looked at the numbers, and the numbers told them buses were cheaper, highways were faster, the future was wide and smooth and required no rails. They were wrong. Cities listened to the wrong frequency for a while, then tuned the dial and found the signal hiding under the static. This story isn't about romance or nostalgia. It's about proximity. It's about what happens when the things you need are close instead of far, when the people you want to see are a short ride instead of a long drive, when your neighbourhood is something you move through instead of something you escape. Rails in the street bring things closer. Home to office, shop to customer, neighbour to neighbour, parent to school, patient to clinic, friend to friend. When we tore them out, we bought distance we didn't need and couldn't afford. When we rebuilt them, we bought back what matters: the ability to move through your own life without spending it on the road. Bell clang, doors close, the line moves.